Okay, so, committee, this is Senate appropriations, and we're continuing our work on the multitude of bills that have been sent our way. Yesterday, we took up F-195. Our, discussion was to move it favorably, but we wanted to have, two sections amended, including, the removal of the appropriations. So if you would review the amendment, hopefully it reflects what we, thought we wanted to do yesterday, and with, if the amendment meets with everyone's satisfaction, then we'll take official action for the bill.
My pleasure, Madam Chair. For the record, Ben Okorowski from the Office of Legislative Counsel. As Madam Chair, you stated, the amendment before the committee has two instances of amendment. So first in section 6, which regards the establishment of the pretrial supervision program, this amendment adds a new subsection F to the bottom of that new statute, entitled contingent on funding, and it reads that the pretrial supervision program established in this section shall only operate to the extent funds are appropriated for its operation. And then the second instance of amendment strikes out section 11 altogether, which is the appropriation for the positions
And then
to
you just
support
remove, 12 to 11, so. Better person.
So I thought the section 5, the electric monitoring program, based on the fiscal note, that there was an expense there, but where there isn't an expense there, or are we just fine with that?
Consciously ignoring
And we also know that it's not a new program, and they have some, technology, so some of it could be limited by what's
it. They're
available.
currently using is the 200
Right.
people.
We don't think there's gonna be a bunch of, the GPS, there's the cost of the GPS, but okay, I remember.
So we decided that we would let that go,
Yeah.
because that in fact is the capacity that currently exists, and
Right.
did not have a specific appropriation.
Okay.
Any other questions? Senator Baruch, you look like you're fatigued yourself.
Slightly.
Like,
All these judiciary.
all right, so, do I have a motion to move the bill favorably as amended? I'll Senator Ruth, and then you can second, Mr. Clerk. Or have you already filled in your own name?
I would like to check the records.
So once it's further discussion, we'll, take a vote, and the clerk will call the roll on S-195.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Pipsley.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr. Yes. Senator Westman, yes. Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Would you like to vote?
Did you call my name?
Would you like to vote?
I would.
Or you were yes or no?
I didn't hear my name.
I didn't hear it either.
Or Ruth?
Yes.
Not only because our hearing saw, our mental acuity shot.
Now you want like your phone.
All right, so Senator Sears, you'd be the reporter, okay.
Rename on there.
Now, we have, 247, which is a veggie, program,
Thank you, Ben.
sunset. And,
Nonsense.
the auditor has asked to testify as well, and we have the reporter, thank you, Ben. We have the reporter of the bill, Senator Harrison is here. I believe, I saw the calendar, actually, the House has also passed a veggie bill, was it H10?
I don't know, and I'm not familiar with that bill.
Oh, I just noticed it. So, is the auditor?
Yes.
I'll let him in. You can let him in, but I'm gonna let, Senator Harrison, is Senator Rumman still coming as?
I believe she is.
Okay. Do you want to, should we, have you run through, the bill?
Whatever you like.
Okay. And I'm thinking that, that it does possibly carry a funding impact, because you're converting loans into forgivable loans, which means that they don't get repaid. But if you could please sort of help us with that. So we have 247, and I'm just looking at our pile of bills here.
If you would like, I could start with the funding request,
Okay.
which assumes that you would have knowledge of some of the other parts of the bill, or I can start at the beginning.
I have to tell you that that might be a faulty assumption. that we've had a chance to read the bill.
Okay,
Um,
so how about,
if you could go through the highlights in terms of the bill, I gather you're dealing with a sunset. And then you are adding, as I understand it, a new provision to fund capital expenditures
and personnel expenditures.
and person.
Yeah, essentially what we're proposing is to cancel the sunset and to have a new program. So if I could just think for the, oh, actually, obviously, Wendy Harrison, Wyndham District. So VEGI is the state's only economic development program with a financial incentive for private companies to create new, well-paying jobs and invest in capital in improvements that otherwise they would not have created or accomplished in the same manner, which is the but for. The Vermont Economic Progress Council reviews the VEGI applications and oversees the program. And I think it's important to say that I was just appointed to that board. I've attended one meeting. I replaced Senator Chittenden on that
Do
board.
we have a fiscal note?
I don't believe so. I'm
So,
not aware of.
so I would think then on page 2, in the form of a forgivable loan, does VITA have money to, or how would they fund a forgivable loan?
Let me skip forward. The forgivable loan program would be the same as traditional VEGI in terms of the job requirements, the definition of qualifying capital, and the but-for requirement. Those requirements would still exist. But unlike traditional VEGI, the businesses would receive upfront funding in the form of a loan that's underwritten by VITA. And as you all know, VITA has been around for 50 years and they're very good at underwriting.
But I see the appropriations way in the back, section 3.
Yes, and-
350,000.
Correct, and the loan amounts would be much less because the program is targeted to businesses with 50 or fewer employees. It's intentionally for smaller businesses. And there would be, there are specific targets, the job target, if that is met, the business would be eligible for $5,000 per full-time employee, paid a qualifying wage. And then the capital investment target would be paid out at 20%. And when I say paid out, that means that's the amount of the loan that would be forgiven. Okay, so they would get money upfront, and receiving the money upfront allows them to do many of these things because bigger companies can have capital accumulated over years, but the smaller companies don't have that. And so that's one reason this other program was
So in
Proposed.
essence, what we're doing is creating sort of a new program here, and it will require funding.
exactly, and it is a new program. And what the funding is in case one of those loans goes south.
You have to,
And
all right, you have to secure it.
right, and that would be for VITA, and we expect that would not be an annual appropriation, it would be for many years and hopefully never needed. Because VITA would be very careful about, in the underwriting
Well,
process.
I'm just looking at an and we have been basically taking appropriations out as we do our budget. This looks like it would be a one-time appropriation. And we would have to, consider it as part of all the other, suggestions, yes. Senator Bruce, and then do you want to come up and testify as well?
I can, if you want to, sure.
Senator Bruce.
Senator Harris, I might have missed it, but would the 350,000 appropriation be added to existing funding?
It's a completely separate amount, and so it is for
It's
for
probably to
the,
collateralize the risk.
Exactly.
So my question is on page 11, am I understanding right that maximum total award would be 200,000?
for personnel, maximum total award would be 200,000.
Okay, because I'm just wondering if 350,000 seems a small amount if the awards are up to 200,000.
Right, so the way it works is VITA would calculate and investigate the appropriateness of the funding for the business who would be getting the funding.
Mhm.
So they do this all the time. So it would in theory be very unlikely that they wouldn't receive the payback of the loan. But so 350,000 is the amount that VITA thought would be reasonable over multiple years of this program.
Per loan.
Well,
Yes, exactly, like if someone wasn't able to pay the loan, because what happens is, and I have a flow chart, I should have.
how quickly do they need to pay it back though?
They have 5 years to
Okay.
make the targets.
So I guess what I'm saying is, if, let's say that if 200,000 is the limit, let's say that Vita made, $300,000 loans. And those weren't gonna be paid back for 5 years. I'm just wondering, will we next year be asked to re-up the fund?
Yeah, let me back up a little
They're not
bit.
using
So
this money to loan.
all that, what the recipients of the funding are required to do is pay interest to VITA through the first 5-year period. The actual loan amount would be much lower, is what they're expecting, like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, because these businesses with 50 people or less wouldn't qualify for a larger amount. So there would be fewer chances of having a loan not be repaid. But the way that it's structured is they have the obligation of the loan through the first 5 years, or they could pay earlier. And when they accomplish their goals, so say they were saying they would get 3 people, then the loan is forgiven once the tax department and VITA confirm that they made their targets.
Right.
So there's not a,
That was, my first question was, is the $350, 350,000 added to some other fund of money that are pre-existing? Because otherwise I guess I'm being dense. I'm not understanding where the money to be loaned comes from, except this appropriation.
sorry, I should have said that. VITA goes and gets funding from big banks. And they negotiate terms with banks, and they make all sorts of loans. It turns out they do the loans for water and wastewater facilities. So they get cash from large banks and have a lower interest rate because, it wouldn't make sense otherwise. So that's where the initial cash is coming from to loan to the applicant. It's from VITA.
From the bank, no?
From the bank, well, VITA gets it from the bank, but then it's technically from VITA.
But if you're converting it from a loan to a forgivable loan, it becomes de facto a grant and has to be paid. I mean, there's no payback, and that has to be funded. And
And
so
that's my question.
I think that's the heart of your
Where's the
question
money?
Right, so,
is how you're basically redefining or expanding a program from potentially a loan program into a grant program and for capital improvements, not just the test of the but-for and adding more employees. So
Right.
maybe we're not understanding. You want to help clarify?
let me try just one more time. So VITA would go to the bank and get, let's say it's $100,000. VITA loans the company $100,000 by and they get a check.
Yep.
For $100,000. So then, but that money didn't come from the state. It came from VITA and the bank.
So it's owed back to the bank with
It's,
interest.
yes, so they pay interest to VITA in the meantime. Once it's forgiven, there's no further,
Yeah, but somebody has to pay the loan.
They gotta pay the
right,
bank.
VITA does, because
Where
that's,
does VITA get the money to pay to?
they get it from that applicant, and that applicant keeps paying the interest.
No, but the principal, not the
The
interest.
principal.
Right,
Who is paying the principal?
okay.
So, Rick Sable, Office of Council, for the first time, I'm seeing a few of you here, I'm new, to the council and to the state.
Actually, I know. But okay, let me just, because it's good for me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So the, that is what the tax department, because the tax department actually calculates the benefit of the, whatever they did, the personnel or the,
I get that would be a reason to do it, but where's the
but
actual
the
money?
tax department.
No, somebody has
So,
got,
I think
can you help?
There's
Sorry.
a, right, there's a pot of, being Rick Sable, this council, there's a pot of money, right, that Vita and Veggie have. And that pot of money is not changing, in this. So I think the purpose, and again, I can speak to the words on the page as to the history of Veggie, the history of Vita. I'm not the best to speak on that. But a couple things, this program, is meant to be a safer option for Vita. Veggie is a direct cash payment, right? You just get the money. If you apply, you win, it's just money. It's a grant, Madam Chair. This program is meant to be a more of a loan, that could be forgiven, that comes from the same pot of money that Vita has. And I don't know how much money they have. I don't know how this changed the Veggie program. What I can say is the $350,000, to me, that's more of an administrative costs for administering this new program. And what I was gonna say earlier is that this was in the governor's recommended budget. So I think they're using that as.
But,
Well,
No,
we aren't bound by what the governor.
Yeah, I was adding that in, yes.
and
It's the
generally
tax.
speaking, if it's operating expenses, that would be base, right? Not a one-time.
This, yeah, you're correct. The 350 is one time, I believe.
Yes, it is, and it is the tax department. That's what, there's not a big pot of money. What the tax department does is they calculate the benefit that business has done to the. Well, but they actually calculate the actual dollars received by the state, and they take the dollars from tax, money. And give it to Vita, in this case, to repay the loan. That's how
But according to page 13, it says that if the business failed to make the required amount of capital investment doesn't put anything directly back into the tax flow. It's basically providing a grant for capital improvements. So
Right.
I'm just really struggling with what we do as a money committee here. In terms of what is a very substantial policy change. And then we have the auditor who has looked at these programs, so I want to give him a chance.
I just wanted to point out on page 9, number 3, line 5, it said, they shall establish a loan loss reserve, which shall be supported by the funds appropriated by the general fund. So that 350 says here, they will use it for the loan loss.
Well, that's what
But is the loan
Yeah.
loss just one that's not
Not paid, what I think,
What about the forgiven?
I think that is just the same as the other veggie incentives. It would come from that same pot of money. Whether you do a forgivable loan or you just give them a grant, that pot of money is the same.
Okay, which was my first question to the reporter was, is there another pot of money? But
No, I think this is just another way to do those incentives. Instead of giving them money, they give them this forgivable loan, which is backed by the 350 loan loss reserve.
but they're going to, out of money that they have on hand, they're gonna give these loans.
and where did Veggie
From
get the money?
veggies pot of money.
That's what I mean. I just want to be
Yeah.
reassured that that's, it would be nice to know what Veggie has on hand, what that pot of money looks like, because this has the sense to me of something that we're gonna wind up being asked to give $1 million to next year, once we're established. But maybe I'm wrong, and
I think we sort of tend to feel it sometimes as the camel's nose in the tent because we've had the downtown development and
yeah,
so a lot of the tax credits have gone. I assume you took, I don't know, who is the head of, economic progress.
You just ask.
So
if there's a new, and Madam Chair, if there's not a pot of money, it is done by the tax department. The tax department calculates the benefit and then they use tax money to pay this.
but the tax department can't just give out taxpayer money.
No.
It could be a
Well,
tax, could be a tax credit.
Okay, it's on, I
Is it a
had a little
tax
chart
credit?
that they.
Is it tax credit
No,
or
no,
Doug knows all this.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna suggest we forget.
I'm
We're
sorry.
really struggling with it because most of us do not have an intimate knowledge of veggie or, and what this will do. We do have a concern because obviously money is very precious. This is a proposal to basically give more assistance to small Vermont businesses, coming from the administration. And we, are pitifully short of money, to be honest. And how does veggie get money? Because it can't just come from the sky. So if you could help us understand if there is an actual grant or if veggie just simply gives out grants and somehow there's calculus that said you've got the return through increased tax revenues, then for capital improvement, it's hard to demonstrate even that circular connection. So if the auditor who has been waiting patiently would like to share and help clarify from your perspective, maybe some of the questions, because obviously we're really stumbling here. So I'm gonna let you sort of give an explanation and your thoughts or concerns or your position on this proposed bill. So with that said, Doug, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello. Sorry I'm not with you, but this is the best I can do today. These are great questions that you have. And by the way, Veggie does not have a pot of money. It never has. It has given away, including its predecessor, the EATI, $100 million. And as to where the money comes from, it comes from the general fund. And Vepsi would have you believe that there is no cost to the taxpayer because every dollar that they give away would not have existed as revenue to the state, but for the award they made to these companies. And before I go on, I want you to know that in some work I did a couple of years ago, I came across a phenomenal study by the guy who is unquestionably the preeminent peer-reviewed researcher in the country on this issue. And he looked at 30 studies about the but-for. And his conclusion was that at least 75% of all of the businesses that claimed to need these incentives would have done exactly what they promised to do without the incentives. Second, I looked at, this is before Senator Harrison took her seat on the council. Along with Tom Cavett, I believe I'm the only person in the state outside of Pepsi and the Agency of Commerce that has ever done this. I looked at the application materials because I was interested in the due diligence of Pepsi in reviewing the but-for. And I can tell you, I was terribly disappointed. I think you're wasting huge sums of money. So the idea that the agency wants to expand this program makes my head spin like I'm in The Exorcist. Remember that girl? So what's happening here, a couple of things. Senator Harrison was mistaken. This program, proposed program, does not require job growth. This is kind of what the agency's been after for years, in response in part to your former colleague in House Ways and Means, Representative Ansel, who questioned the need for this kind of a program when we have low unemployment. Well, what Pepsi's basically trying to do is find a way to give money to companies for capital improvement with no job creation at all. And this program will give you money if you only do capital investment. Now, I think you would agree, you all know business people, you have for years, some of you are business people. If your business is growing and you need to expand your capacity to meet growing demand, you have no choice but to make a capital investment. It's in your best interests. If you know that there's new equipment or something that will increase your productivity, you have no choice. Your competitors are doing it. You have to do it. I'm not aware of any evidence that there is a shortage of capital in the state for businesses. There are businesses that can't justify borrowing the money. Maybe they're not as successful as they'd like to be. But in the absence of a clear justification for this program, I'm not sure why it's moving as it is. The question you had earlier, Madam Chair, about a fiscal note is spot on. I think if it were me, I would want Tom to dig into this a little bit before you do anything. As for the $5,000 per employee, where did that come from? There's no analysis. Put aside the but-for, at least Vepsi for the veggie program has the Remy model run to estimate what the model says would be the benefit to the state if the but-for is real. Here, there's no such Remy model run. And by the way, it's not done by the tax department, it's done by the Agency of Commerce. I think now that Ken Jones retired, they've contracted again with Jeff Carr, as they did for many years, which is fine. Jeff is honest and he'll do it above board. But the $5,000 is just came out of nowhere. How do we know that the benefit to the state is $5,000? And it better be, because it's coming out of the general fund. That's how they're paying the loan or repaying the loan if the company doesn't, if it's made forgivable. Also, the question of recapture or repayment. The language in the bill says that that can be arranged, but quote, in an amount and manner established in the grant agreement. What does that mean? It means that somebody in the agency and VITA is going to decide that question, not you, which I think is a problem. Anyway, that's a start. This is a mistake, I think, a real mistake.
Send person.
I assume I know the answer to this question, but you didn't comment on part of the bill that strikes the sunset.
I didn't. I gather there's no appetite for that. So what I would do is just drop back to ground zero and say, give them another year or two and you can revisit all of these questions, which I think is appropriate in my view. I think the whole program should be reviewed thoroughly. I know you guys are always busy and you never have time for something of that nature, rarely. But if you're not in a position to say, get rid of it, then at least extend it for a year or two and come back to it next year. Or you could even ask some people to do some work over the summer, but we've done a lot of work on this project, this program. It's wasting.
This would get rid of the sunset, so the program would be just running for perpetuity.
Right.
Which I assume you would oppose.
I can say, based on the research I've done and what I know about it, and I'm the guy who wrote the first report 24 years ago on this program, and the but-for is not real in many, many cases. So if that's true, then a lot of the money that's going out the door isn't needed by the businesses to do whatever they're promising to do. And that's what Bartik's research pointed out. And you've heard that from me and Kavett and others, a few others over the years. But for now, if you guys collectively aren't ready to get rid of the program, then I would just ignore the substance of what the committee put into 247 and go back to the sunset. And if you like, just say, you know, we're going to extend that for another 2 years.
So I guess what we're struggling with is, well, first of all, there's an appropriation. Second of all, what is the impact on the general fund? I think in this case, it isn't even, you know, the measurement there is just that they had to invest the required amount of capital. So you're right, there's no increased workforce and that dimension. But also, is this in your mind sort of a variation on a tax expenditure? In other words, it's going to hit the general fund in a way that is less visible than, say, a direct appropriation to support a particular program or activity.
That's exactly right. And unlike the veggie program, which at least has the veneer of a justification based on the model run, there is no model run here. They just picked the $5,000 number and the 200K or 20% of $1 million or more. There's been no analysis, and this doesn't even call.
I'm getting to know that the commissioner wants to debate this. This is not a committee that can relitigate all this. What we have is the question around the money and the potential impact on the general fund, which is the budget is in horrible shape as we're trying to put it together. And so I don't know how to, we need to move forward as it relates to the money. I realize the commissioner wants to clarify the veggie forgivable loan, but if in fact we are talking, unless she's saying it doesn't cost any money, which is hard to believe that it doesn't cost money when you're actually converting it to a grant if the capital investment is made, that's not a very, I mean, that's not a very hard test. If I get 10,000 to buy a refrigeration unit and I buy it, then I'm going to have a forgivable loan. That's what the language says, as I read it. So that, from our appropriations perspective, I'm really searching about how we want to proceed because we don't have the money to commit today for 350,000, nor if it in fact has an impact the same as a tax expenditure, then that falls into the purview of the finance committee. And then, but the ultimate impact is still the same. You have less revenue to support your basic functions of government. Tax expenditures are not free money.
This has always
Correct.
been in the calculation, it's been done, when you calculate the revenues of the state and the balancing out.
Well, I'm sure it has.
Yeah,
It has to.
it has,
A tax-
this is the debate that has been going on around all of this for decades now.
And I am just saying as an appropriations committee, this is not the forum to litigate, the performance or, we have basically said, our position is any new programs, unless there's something very, very justifiable. For example, tying into, flooding or something like that, we're not prepared to endorse at this point. In light of the budget reality, so I guess this is, I don't know how to take this bill forward. But the money's gotta come out, and I am not agreeing to anything that has an indirect, even though it's a tax expenditure, that would have the impact of reducing revenues. So, because those have to come right off the top, in terms of what we have available. So Senator Ruth.
So I hear you, my thinking is along the same lines. I think we can't just pull the money and let the rest go forward because it's all really the money and how it's handled. So if we were to leave it on the wall, we could, in the fullness of time, we have the discussion, if we decide that we want to fund it, we could put the whole thing in the budget.
Yes, you can.
So,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to go out today or tomorrow.
No, it doesn't, although, quite a bit of text could go in the budget, but certainly,
So we've done it when we started.
yeah, we could.
Yeah.
I think the other question is, I think there's a companion bill that's coming out of the House, and so there's another mechanism as well.
Very, Madam Chair, very different bill.
I was gonna say, don't call it companion.
Yeah, H10 is a very different bill. This is unique in that it creates this forgivable loan track. H10 makes, more constrictions on veggie, as opposed to this, which expands veg.
No, I'm just. Blushing my heart.
So,
Madam Chair, one final thing, and thank you again for the opportunity. I would encourage you to ask JFO for a fiscal note. The question you pose about how much the program is going to cost as a tax expenditure should be answered.
well, I guess, you're agreeing with me, so thank you.
I am, yes.
On that, because it's hard to, we do not like making decisions without a better understanding of what are the implications. And so I see the chair of the committee has joined us as well. Do you have anything?
Sounds like we had a good time. No, for the record, Senator Patron, I'm still Chair of Economic Development. I would just say I fully support taking more time on this. I don't think there's a rush because the House is considering the program and has a very different bill that they're working on. And we were going to have to reconcile the two anyway, so we'd appreciate if the Appropriations Committee had the relevant stakeholders in and better understood the context. And we've asked them to specifically design materials that are much clearer about our inputs and our outputs. And I think that would be valuable for you to see because it's been over 5 years since we've really litigated this issue and our other programs have been somewhat successful. VITA would be involved in the forgivable loan and we feel good about that. But it's important to hear from them, how they're thinking about the monies that they would need and what they think they can do to create new wealth and revenue in the state with that.
Okay, well, as a former chair of this committee, so there's an awful lot of social calculus that gets thrown at us in this building. So, I think we just feel that this is a bill that is, not ready for, us to, take any action on, and in light of the fact that there is another bill that will be coming over and these differences, and if there's a vehicle to have that committee discussion and.
Oh, Madam Chair, oh, see, who's here? Madam Chair, to clarify, I have no reason to believe that H10 is going anywhere
Okay.
in the House. They were anticipating responding to us.
Oh,
Um,
no, it's on for third reading.
Yeah,
oh,
It was on their calendar. I lost.
never mind then. Okay, so we,
Today.
okay, then we have time to respond. I'm sorry, I thought it wasn't going anywhere.
So it went from nowhere right to the front page.
Apparently so, yes.
Things changed the last 2 weeks.
Yes, I misspoke.
Quite a bit.
I'm sorry, so we
So
would
you
love
do
to
have that vehicle.
Open the door and let her say hello.
Do we need the fiscal?
People want baby therapy.
Yes,
Yes.
I would like. to.
Yes, you're
All right,
I'm gonna
absolutely-
ask for it, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
since we're not taking action,
Look
we
at
would.
this.
I don't know.
Get the smile.
I like the details.
Say we like that cheese.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So, committee, I think the consensus is that we are gonna let, H10 be the vehicle to have, more work done and have the fiscal analysis necessary to know what will be the impact on revenues. Thank you very much, Doug. I just happened to see the house calendar to see it was up for third reading.
So we.
Okay, we've done 195, energy code, Senator Frey.
Pass the text before.
All right, is there money there too? Is your fiscal note on that? There's.
Are we doing 253?
253, right. I just committee, I had a further conversation with Senator Ingalls on 312. And as you know, the capital bill now has bonded money and then general fund in the cash fund of which we created. And I told him that out of that general fund, which right now is the governor has 10 million there, would have to be the funding source for this, because he said he had found the money. And as I read this, how it's setting up the work that needs to be done and so forth. I suggested the better venue for that would be to include that as part of his proposed use of that general fund in the capital bill. So,
Along with the forensic.
yes, yes.
Money for the forensics, yeah.
So, that would, then, because they've spent so much time on it, they've looked at what they want, they're anticipating an eventual closure simply because of the water quality issue. So, I just wanted to let you know that at this point, I don't believe it's necessary for us to take action on this bill separately.
Yeah.
Because it will be included as part of the overall capital bill. So that was my understanding with Senator Ingalls. Okay, so now we are down to 253 and then, well, no, we have,
53.
Building energy.
Building energy code.
yeah, and the only other item
Go
that
get
I
some
had,
bread?
he's on his way.
I texted him, but
Yeah, so, and the last one, which was at 4 o'clock, is the super fund cost recovery, and that, has still, has to come out of finance.
I think it just got voted up.
Oh, good, okay, so, we thought maybe Senator Sears,
I can do.
you could do that. But now we have Senator Bray here, we will go to 253. And do we have money that we have to take away from you?
And I believe there's money there's money because there's a work group that's established,
Oh.
although it is housed I got the drift when I think, so it is housed at the Department of Justice. They do keep, there's a couple legislators on it, because there's a lot going on that would be helpful for us to stay engaged in, as opposed to just getting a report. There was a predecessor to this for me this past summer that I participated in, and it was very helpful to be a full participant as opposed to just getting educational update.
Okay, so looking at page 5, we have reimbursement of the legislators, and then we have a working group that, if they're not otherwise compensated, and they can meet no more than 8 times. Senator Nitka, you got that?
6.
I knew that too.
That's
6 times.
8.
8 is a lot, but yeah.
Well, not,
That goes all
well,
over
it's a big group.
It's a big group,
Yeah.
so more people there meet there.
How many
Maybe
times?
they should meet
So I
on
go that
that.
long with only 6 feet.
So committee, this is, our days are hard to keep focused. So this work group would actually,
Meet once a year,
what?
meet once a year.
It says it meets up to 8 times a year.
Does it?
I think it's 8 times total, right?
Well, if it's not, paid properly, the idea is 8, up to 8 times in a year, not 8 times between now and 2030.
Oh,
The work group
8 times per year.
continues to operate since 2030 because
This is 8 in fiscal year 2025. It's on page 5. And so that's what we're talking about. That's why we have it, is because of the cost involved with, the work group. So what, do you explain the work group
Does that
and why we should fund it?
thank you.
All right, we'll go back to you.
The very high level version is that we have had since the 1990s, residential building energy standard, since the early 2000s, the commercial building energy standard. We have compliance rates on the residential side at 54%, and there's thought that that may be overstating it. The commercial is higher, closer to the in the 80s. But we're also seeing declining compliance. So the basic idea is that
Declining compliance, you said?
What do you mean by that?
that fewer people are necessarily building to the energy code, the standard. And
Construction.
New
construction, exactly. So, and right now, so they're never conflict. There's one, we have houses that are, more expensive to operate because they're less energy efficient than they could be if they met code. We also have houses that are being constructed without an adequate knowledge of building science, and so we end up with things like the horrible pictures you see in the paper where they open a wall and it's full of mold, and they have to basically tear out the contents of the wall or tear off the outside sheathing and refill. So between missing out on opportunities to save money, and that means also more emissions at a time when we're trying to reduce emissions.
They're harder to heat.
And then another piece is that there are builders who are building to code. There are other builders who say, I can make your house a little cheaper by not building to code. So we have this perverse situation where, because of a lack of enforcement, people who undercut the code or don't comply can outcompete those who actually live up to the code. So that's why this working group is, you can see there's quite a long way to go to create a coherent, organized system that updates the code, helps people learn the code, inspects and tracks performance. And right now, we don't do that very well.
So I'm going to Senator Lyons and then Senator West.
So, as we looked at the rules, the RVs and CB rules, one of the things that became clear was the need for educating some of the contractors. So I see in here, there's this website. Is that instruction? How
Well,
are,
there's a registry, are you talking about?
well, I don't know, how are we gonna reach out to the contractors to help?
That's part of what they're gonna recommend strategies.
Yeah, so OPR, so you're putting your finger on one of the challenges. We don't know who builders are. If you want to talk to the builders of the state of Vermont, there's no list. So we, 2 years ago, I guess, had created a voter registry. We only happily on it as I think of like April 1st of this year, like it's close to the date. And so we talked to the OPR, and when people register, can you please have them check a box? Like you can't complete registration on a checking box that says, I acknowledge there is such a thing as an energy code. And then here's a link to go get a free copy.
So don't some municipalities actually have, codes?
And when you go out for a permit, you have to.
But apparently there, you might have them, or we might have the standards, but the issue is, compliance or understanding what those standards are.
The standards are statewide, but they're not that well known,
Yeah.
not that well published.
So.
So Senator Westman is itching to
Yeah,
ask
I've got
a
a
question.
question. So is there already money within, the fire safety division and public safety for this? Because on page 4, in D, you say that, on line 12, may be funded by monies appropriated by the General Assembly or grants received.
Okay.
And then on page 5, on line 15 through 17, you do the same thing. So is there money presently, because the codes are housed in fire safety, is that what is happening here?
You're putting your finger on another problem. So fire safety just does plumbers, electricians, elevators, and fire safety, but they don't do energy.
Well, how are they gonna fund a position? If they
Right,
don't have
how
the
are you gonna
appropriation?
fund? Is there an appropriation right now? Where does the appropriation go for this work now? So if there's gonna be general fund money going to it, where's it coming from?
I'm not, so
So on
there's
line
money
12,
on the working group, right? And
that's a very modest amount,
Yeah.
because I would suspect most are already being paid. I think
Well,
what's.
it says they can use get a third party contract.
Oh, I understand that. I'm
I
talking
can
about the
answer that.
work group members. But, if you could explain, or possibly,
I know the answer to this question.
the, public service may have some capacity, and that's what, it's giving them permission, but we need to know how they would, pay a third party consultant.
So it's a May that they, because we had one this past summer, and I don't know if you know Richard Fahey, who runs ND Futures Group. He, in partnership with the state, put in for a DOE grant, I believe the state's been awarded money, over $1 million to help it, design, implement a program to help build to an energy code. So there's, the concept is that DOE grant will fund a third party contractor so that the group has some extra muscle for doing its work.
Well, on 13, or any grant funding, so you're anticipating the possibility of that. Would, the Department of Public Service, we're giving them permission, obviously, to
Right.
hire, which they probably could do anyway, maybe. But we're not giving them any, additional money to do it. Is this something they can fund out of their existing appropriations?
Okay, so there, when we took testimony, they didn't ask for additional, I mean, they staffed this working group last summer out of their normal operating budget. But there was, extra money that was, I think, appropriated for the consultant. Meanwhile, consultant has helped the state pull down a DOE grant, which will help fund consultants going forward.
All right, so Senator West,
The last question I got, if there's grant money, the grant, it would be accepted to that we have to go to this.
yes, it can.
Yes.
All right, any other?
No,
questions?
I
All right,
just-
Senator
I'm
Starr,
trying
and then
to-
we'll go
So,
ahead, Senator Birchland.
If we have a group or an agency that's already doing, you name 5 or 6
Yeah.
different parts of the building.
Electricians, fire, elevators, I think there's others.
So why wouldn't we have that same person or crew the energy thing as well. Why are we setting up a whole new crew in there? Don't worry, this guy that got the grant that weaseled his way in will have a whole agency within 2 or 3 years to do this inspection, and he'll be the commissioner or something. I mean, to get your nose under the tent, and boy, you can breathe pretty well.
So this is such a fun visit because each thing is something that we struggled with in this group. We took a poll in the group informally, Division of Fire Safety, they say, we are so busy, don't ask us to do anything more unless you're giving us staff and like, we should. We're not asking you to do anything more, but because they already deal with the trades, inspection, they already have inspectors who go out. For energy code, there's no crew from the state to go check compliance with anything.
You've got one right there.
Yeah, so we polled in that working group, who believes that fire and safety will be the logical home of this work? And 18 out of 20 people said fire and safety. Mr. DeRocher, understandably enough, was one of the 2 no votes. And he said, I can't take that on. So that's why the language in here on page 4 says, develop plans and recommendations for a potential transition to of the RVs and CVs to Division of Fire Safety. That would be exactly as you say. It would make sense to put it all in one place.
I mean, you don't keep creating these little departments that
We're
turn into,
trying to get there,
well,
but there
who's
was a
the
lot of
boss
push.
around here?
Uh,
Are you the tail or the dog?
I only look at the head of the table, so.
Okay, all right, well, I'm gonna bring this, Senator Pershing and then Senator Lyons. So I think Senator Starr has just agreed with you.
Yeah, he has.
I just would like to
It's like
put
a-
that on record, that
That's a
it makes
special
sense
moment. It's
to
gonna be
build on a
high
resource and
Yeah, but you're
expertise.
promoting something you don't agree to.
You know,
I mean, you're promoting.
we're,
In a minute, Bobby's gonna kill his own bill.
All right, well, he's been known to do that in the past. It's not germane. I'm gonna go to Senator Pershing and then Senator Lyons.
it's not your name.
And it's his own bill.
I do remember that moment.
I bet,
Yes,
we all do. All right, Senator
Just
Pershing.
worked on that one for him.
2 things, so I'll vote, but I'll try to stick to the funding. So on the working group, is the legal assistance of the department new, or is that they also have done that?
They do that feasibility staff does.
All right.
And then,
My question-
and then in their testimony was they would continue to do this without needing funding or other.
Yeah, I think, I think they have some concerns about how much happens with their current budget, but they, so I think they registered, a modest protest about adding things we do, but we also said we did this over the last year. We're
Let's
asking you-
continue your
We're
work.
asking you to continue. Well, they're, because they are the ones who actually update and post the energy code.
Okay.
And then the other part about the working group is that it ceases to exist 2030.
Yeah.
So even though it's only 8 for fiscal 25, why do we need to keep it going till 2030 or just appropriating 1 year? Does that set us up for like a presupposing
We
appropriations for the next?
sort of a seat of the pants analysis, and there is in this report, there's a lot more detail.
Is that the request?
This is a distilled version of that report. There's a much longer, more detailed report. We had a very long to-do list, including a transition to fire safety, stuff like that. Workforce training, inspectors, a lot of pieces have to be assembled. And the seat of the pants deal was like, okay, this is a transition that happens probably over 5 to 7 years. So, the police don't create a committee that runs in perpetuity. So we said, 7 years out, 2030, that was the, for now, an end date for the
So
work.
I have a question. What's your data source to determine the extent of compliance now? I mean, I just rebuilt an 1830 house. Had to rewire it, all new, insulation as tight as much as we could. How do you know that I was up to code?
How do you know?
You got it inspected.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't get it
You don't need
inspected.
to.
So.
I live in Danville, I don't know, but on the other hand, I'm the landlady, and I have to pay the heat as part of the rent, so I wanna make sure it's quite fuel efficient.
And I bet you hired a good local contractor that you knew would build it right.
But I think that, yes, I probably hope I did. But how do you gather the data in terms of knowing that I, actually invested everything I could in the most, state of the art insulation and whatever? What's the data source for that? That's my question.
Sure.
Did somebody report me
No, I mean, so
as
we
compliant?
don't have a comprehensive way.
Well, how do you know what, I guess the question is, how do you know?
Department goes out and does, they do visits, they do a sample of, visits to sites and they.
Would they look at building permits and
They
stuff?
pay somebody to do an analysis.
They do,
So-
okay. This is more of an informational question.
Well, that, and that's part of why some people think that
I'd like to answer
that number
numbers.
is off.
All right, so
That's me.
thank you. I just was like, how do you get the input? Now I understand that.
For,
So Senator Westman and then Senator
for
Lyons.
new construction, you would submit your plans to the fire marshal, and the fire marshal has to stamp your plans and give approval for new construction to anything that's done. The codes that, I don't really quite get how public, service over here, educates the fire, wardens that stamp your, for Washington and Royal County, I have to take it to Barry and I have to get it stamped before I can build. And they go in and they say, this is the size of your windows for safety, this is what you need to do.
They just do fire safety, they don't do the energy code.
Well, if you set an energy my question is, if I set an energy code that is done by public service, do you educate the fire marshals that do the stamping of all your plans?
I do believe Senator
Go ahead.
Gray was suggesting that that's why we wanted to do a consolidated review, so it would
Senator Starr's
include.
idea.
Yeah, Senator Starr's idea.
Can I ask a question?
Well, yeah, but you know, he doesn't really want to take it. And I don't want to tell him where you're getting it, buddy, so hang on.
So I think there's agreement that we want to do a consolidated review. So I'm gonna go to Senator Lyons.
So good, that's what, a lot of my questions were being asked during this process. You know, it's great to be the youngest in a family, because you know, that's where you're gonna be for the rest of your life. But,
So I
so,
can tell you I was not the baby.
no, it's hard to be the baby. It's hard to be the baby. So Senator Gray, obviously, Department of Public Service is doing it over here, and then who's doing it out there? And how do they have the grounding to do that? I know we asked them years ago for some efficiency, analysis and studies, and they did a great job. My other question is,
Giving up here today.
can't we simply, suggest that the Division of Fire Safety write the same kind of grant that Richard Facey wrote? I mean, why are we're dependent on having this big working group going on, when in reality, maybe we could write a grant that would come in, could be a limited service position, make some suggestions and put this forward, have it move forward. But so it
Could
just
you
seems,
translate that to what it means with the bill in front of?
it doesn't
Senator
mean
Lyons?
anything for the bill, except are they doing that? Are you going to make a recommendation that they look for sustainable funding for the position wherever you're deciding it goes? So if fire safety had the money, maybe they would be happier if they could hire people. So my question is there anything in here that suggests that they will look for, apply for, or identify recommendations for funding that goes to administrative work on RVs and CVs and on educational work that is what I heard in Elkhart is really so important. So just a question.
Sure. Well, once again, it's please making my heart sing. Page 4, line 6.
Yay.
Including potential funding
For
sources.
Potential transition, including potential funding sources.
Do that, everybody.
All right. Other questions before Senator Starr changes his mind?
I was wondering if we could refer to this as Bobby's Law. Actually.
I don't want my name called.
No.
Because every contractor is gonna be saying, yeah, you just added another 5%.
Call it the Energy Star Program.
That was good. I think we're gonna be handing a lot of stuff after. His little phone rang twice the other day. I thought the phone bill had to be the Star Act after that.
Well, there's used to be in English history, the Star Chamber, so,
Right.
yeah. So I want to get back to this bill. There's, at this point, what we have is a modest amount of money that would be incurred. Now, let me ask for the group of people, if anybody did need to get reimbursement, what budget would pay for that?
So we were anticipating that would be general fund.
To whom? There's no appropriation. It's not is it a legislative committee?
There are some listed.
So would it be out of the legislative budget then? Is that your plan?
That was that's what we did this past summer.
Okay.
And if anybody has a-
Almost everyone there was officially representing somebody.
So this basically is a legislative, because of the legislators being on it, it would come out of the legislative budget, even though it's not going to be chaired. It's not a legislative committee per se.
Did you chair it last time? That was chosen by the group or?
Yeah, they, done the bill. They think that we could be chair. Anyone else want to be chair?
I'm just wondering do we need to say anything about that?
Sure.
In terms of,
Putting your finger on one good thing, just want to point out one other thing, and that is 7 and 8 on page 4. Consider whether or not the state can adopt a statewide building code. So that's really, over time, what will knit this together. We are the only state in the union without a statewide building code.
And we're only,
even New
we're
Hampshire,
the only capital in the United States without a McDonald's.
and
so
we're proud of
what?
that. We're proud of that.
So where are we proud of not having a building code?
We do all the time.
I mean, come on.
And we don't have a constitutional amendment for balanced budget.
No, we don't. And I think there's a lot of good reasons not to have all those clunky things.
But,
So
I'm just,
all.
Then the first look at
First.
round the road
The
side.
staff needs to be
And a
done
balanced
by,
budget.
Of course, yeah.
not from the
well, it says the payments under this subsection shall be appropriated by the county or a grant.
Right, but it says up here, the working
It's,
group shall have
it's end of the day.
administrative,
Legal,
legal assistance.
all
This is
departments.
little who tilts us,
Right.
see, but anything.
I think that you're pretty much.
Shrink out no longer.
It's
They could-
it's actually.
But the people that
How many
administer here
legislators?
too, also one are good at fire safety.
It is a collaborative effort, obviously.
I see
So,
that.
so I guess,
It would be a good point.
Senator Gray, could I just make sure that I understand?
Okay.
The working group has 15 members and then, there is some concern about, the potential workload on the Department of Public Service. It is clear that, the payments for the working group members, if they seek reimbursement and qualify under a rule, would be, for money appropriated by the General Assembly. But I don't know whether that's the right way to put it.
When you look at the list of everyone on page 3, and I was saying it now, I'm reviewing it again. I think I don't know that anyone in the group last fall, was putting in for beings.
I expect they're not, but I just want to make sure that the language is correct about, from the General Assembly, I'm assuming means from our legislative budget, but, is that the correct, way? Okay.
Make
All right.
only two.
And it's, just, yeah, So the number of legislators, I think, probably in the General Assembly will confirm that. Otherwise, it seems like the money right now is modest. There's more work that needs to be done. Hopefully we can get a grant to move this forward. So,
Can I ask one question?
sure, you can have.
What good are the two legislators on this committee?
Well, it means that they get the reimbursement out of our budget rather than public service.
Why are they there anyways?
I would say there's a lot of moving pieces and it was quite, it was the most productive working group I've participated. We learned a lot, shared a lot of information.
I think Senator Gray would like to continue in that capacity.
Yes, you got it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I have one.
For continuity. Okay,
There's gonna be a transition and it's gonna involve statutory change.
Your,
all right, so do you have another comment, Senator Starr?
well, I mean.
Or do you want me to shut you off now?
I just moved the bill, Bobby. It's your bill.
So.
Madam Chair, if you would entertain a motion, I would move the bill.
I would certainly.
Senator
entertain it.
Starr already did.
Well, then I would second Bobby's thought.
He's in, well, he's cheap enough. He doesn't want to spend money on wasted heat.
Well, no, I've insulated my house properly like I've done.
Yeah. So we have a motion to move the bill favorably, as seconded. So I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Birchner,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
Yes,
Westman's yes, Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in,
Yeah.
Chris. I know you gotta go back over. You're working on a couple more bills to send our
We're
way.
trying to send you some more business.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
You know, if you wanna check out your own house, you talk to efficiency, right, you could, probably one of the best sources of unbiased information will be getting a home energy audit.
I think the best barometer is probably my fuel bill.
There is that.
One, yeah.
yeah, and if they start
Sending
sending me
meetings, Chair.
Who has public service?
Public service, is that? Oh, just a
Thank
moment,
you.
just a moment, let me get my check.
I'm gonna say Perch.
public service,
We just voted.
I'm a public.
No.
No, he
No.
can't do that.
Oh, public service is under Star. Oh, oh my God.
That's why you moved the bill.
Oh,
you will.
oh. All right,
Uh-oh.
so now our last bill, is the climate super fund cost recovery program. And, so, and there is a nexus with another bill that we're gonna be taking up tomorrow. And that has to do with, if we create a special fund, so that if we get any money, as a result of this, so then it would be deposited, so that would help with mitigation and other expenditures. So if you could tell us a bit about your bill,
Bit
please.
about the bill.
Yeah.
It is a
Do we have?
cost recovery program that is also combines the administration plan for a examination of Vermont resiliency fund. So the administration had planned a resiliency fund. The treasurer, with the administration, was going to determine, pardon me?
300,000?
Yeah, it was going to determine the,
600,
no, 300.
One to A and R, 300
Oh,
and
yes.
treasurer 300,
Yeah.
that's 300 and 300 is
Right.
600,
But anyway, I was finishing
pardon me.
the program, but
Alright.
it's, so it combines the two. The treasurer is in charge of figuring out where, what we need to do to be resilient, as well as the administration, but also to look at who's responsible for the storms that we've seen, the climate change we've seen, in terms of large refiners, et cetera. Does not affect your local oil delivery company or your garbage man or whoever else. It's clearly the larger producers of that carbon. And then they would determine the cost by 2027. There may be lawsuits. The Attorney General is ready to face them, and any money used for this program, 600,000, would first come out of would be the first thing to come out of any recovery of funds from the polluters.
So this would include, we crosswalk 259, which created a fund, but that was specifically to help municipalities. There's no money for that right now.
No,
We could anticipate and amend that bill to refer to the Climate Superfund Cost Recovery Program Fund.
Yep.
And which got created. Now, did you create that fund in this bill
yeah,
as well?
rates in this budget.
Okay, all right, so I'm just mentioning that to people, that there's a nexus.
I
between it.
assume that it is. I mean,
Well, you usually have to,
I think that the appropriation desire of the committee was to make clear that it's sort of like starting up the cannabis program. We knew they didn't have any money, but once monies came in, it would be returned to the general fund.
okay, so it's,
It's like a loan, but obviously one might argue that there will never be any money in, but big companies will fight it, and they will.
I imagine.
Sure, they will. But, as more quite frankly, as more states come on.
Well, they
that
join,
will
you
be
think?
better. They will probably join, and I believe we'd be the first state if we get it through the governor. And my understanding is the administration supports this, the Agency of Natural Resources supports it, the treasurer supports it. And the Conservation Law Fund Foundation supports it, which
You've
is a groups that don't often agree with.
Well, we have appropriations and you also have a limited service position that has been created here.
That's the first 300,000 is the limited service position. A&R.
Number 5,
So whose pockets and
that's to hire.
Temporarily picking general.
It doesn't, no, it doesn't seem to, the 300,000 for purpose of implementing, including personal services for the position created in 5. So it does, the 300,000 paid for the ongoing position plus,
But that's general, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Both of them are general fund.
So where does that come?
It comes from your general fund,
Not in the other county.
but the intent of the bill is that it be reimbursed.
Right.
At some point eventually.
Yeah, but not in this fiscal year.
I've tried to make loans like that with the bank. They didn't go over,
We don't have this bill yet, so.
what do you got for
We don't.
collateral?
No, no.
Oh, is it correct?
So I
Oh,
guess,
is
It hasn't been,
In finance?
hasn't been, it's gotta go up and come down.
Then when did you usually pass it? At the past it?
You passed it last week.
It's on this.
we haven't had a reverse.
Those finance.
Yeah, finance has it. And I don't know, well, is there a fee? What's in it? And I don't see that it does create a special fund, maybe,
Well.
oh, wait a minute, Climate Superfund. Recovery, there is created, section on page 10, there is the recovery fund.
Maybe we should ask Michael for it.
Well, so monies from time to time, cost recoveries distributed to the fund under the section. Okay, so, this is a bill that we'll have to figure out tomorrow, and maybe it's good because it does have the nexus with that other bill.
Okay.
And we then would have it officially.
One that makes crossover.
Well, the ops has one on municipalities and, which we have as well. And so, the big thing is moving this money out ahead. And how we want to do that.
Does the house have any inkling of this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a priority. We had to start doing this first.
So let us think about that.
Like we got Scott going first on the pension. Stop the first on the raise the age.
All right, so this is really akin to the big tobacco kind of initiative
Yeah.
that relates to health and
Yeah, it's
cost.
actually, I was explaining that my experience with the Superfund as chair of the select board in Bennington back in the mid-80s was that, you know, everybody got impacted, even a small garbage man passed away in his estate, had one garbage truck, his poor wife. They attached whatever company it was found liable, they attached his dump truck, garbage truck.
Well, yeah.
It wasn't worth much.
Well, yeah.
So,
Those companies, they weren't gonna,
so it looks like in, as we really initiate litigation, staffing to support it and then the position, so that is.
The secretary, I mean, the attorney general would use.
Well, they've got money,
They-
we have a special, high cost litigation. fund of
they had already
investment.
defended, right?
Yeah.
Should the need arise. Did they already have a suit with ExxonMobil?
So we're not gonna make a decision on this today. This is just to let you know that we've got it here. We don't have it here yet. But it's
Prepare
coming.
yourself.
Prepare ourselves. And I think that's it for today.
What about,
We've got S-96,
yeah,
which is coming tomorrow. We asked for a fiscal note from,
just gonna come tomorrow.
Yeah, and,
That one won't be-
the one you sponsored.
Oh, I love.
Uh-huh. And, and,
Wow.
we have,
Wow.
we have this one,
Don't we have another one?
and we have the GovOps bill. That's it, right? Three, 180, 3 and 4. That's 96. 181 is ready to go. It needs an amendment. Bobby, you took it up, didn't you?
No, we didn't, I don't have it
Okay.
signed it out, we were waiting.
Oh.